a potential oil spill after water entered the engine room of the Panamanian-flagged tanker Mersin near the Dakar's coast. The vessel is owned by Turkey's Mersin Shipping Inc. and managed by Besiktas Shipping, according to the data from the London Stock Exchange Group. The incident, which led to the vessel issuing a distress signals, occurred overnight from 27th to 28th November, prompting the deployment of tugboats and specialized teams from Senegal's Navy and Maritime Authority, the Port Authority have shared. Now moving on to our next news, the President of the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda are set to travel to Washington next week to sign a peace deal and meet with U.S. President Donald Trump. The meeting is expected on December 4th. The war in eastern Congo this year has killed thousands and displaced hundreds of thousands, with the Rwanda-backed M23 rebel group seizing the region's two largest cities. While Rwanda denies backing M23, UN experts have reported that it exercises command and control over the group. Security measures in the June deal called for operations against the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda and the withdrawal of Rwandan troops. Meanwhile, Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi has emphasized that the Rwandan troop withdrawal is essential for true regional and economic integration. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Ambassador Mahesh Sachdev. He's a former Indian High Commissioner to Nigeria, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for staying with us. Now looking at this, what challenges could arise in ensuring the withdrawal of Rwandan troops and the disbanding of the M23 rebels, given the reports of Rwanda's ongoing control over the group? And if I remember correctly, I think there was a similar peace deal that was signed in U.S. this year.
You are very right. The two leaders had met in White House and signed a deal in June that laid out a timetable towards peace between the two countries and in withdrawal of Rwanda's troops from eastern part of Congo. Successive agreements have been signed elsewhere, including at Doha last month. But peace is yet to return, and the eastern part of Congo bordering Rwanda continues to see violence and instability. The area is rich in minerals and has been at the focus of an ethnic conflict. Here one should say that M23 is allegedly supported by Rwandan troops, Rwandan Defense Forces, and on the other side, Rwanda alleges that there are militias of Rwandan rebels, including those who were involved in the genocide 25 years ago in Rwanda, that are operating from this eastern part of the country. Kinshasa denies any involvement in this particular matter, but the two sides have yet to reach a watertight agreement under which this withdrawal of M23 rebels supported by Rwanda and non-operation of Rwandan rebels located in the eastern part of Congo would take place. Hopefully, President Trump, who's been pursuing peacemaking in various parts of the world, would would once again try and patch up the relations between the two countries and in turn generate mining business for his country's companies in that part of Congo. Let's hope he succeeds.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed, we hope that this one holds on. With that, I would like to thank Ambassador Mahesh Sachdev for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move the focus to our next news. At least 20 people have died and several remain missing after a boat capsized on Lake Maï-Ndombe in northwestern Congo. The vessel was carrying passengers to the capital, Kinshasa, when it overturned. Among the victims was a newly ordained Catholic deacon. Local authorities say rescue teams are still assessing the full death toll, which the government has not officially confirmed. Boat accidents are increasingly common in Congo as passengers rely on overloaded wooden vessels with few life jackets. Many travel at night, making rescue operations very challenging and leaving bodies unaccounted for. Recent months have seen dozens of similar tragedies across the region. At least 20 people have passed away and several remain missing after a boat capsized on Lake Maï-Ndombe in the northwestern Congo. The vessel was carrying passengers to the capital, Kinshasa, when it overturned. Among the victims was a newly ordained Catholic deacon, and local authorities say rescue teams are still assessing the full death toll, which the government has not officially confirmed. Boat accidents are increasingly common in Congo as passengers rely on overloaded wooden vessels with few life jackets. Many travel at night, making rescue operations highly challenging and leaving bodies unaccounted for. Recent months have seen dozens of similar tragedies across the region. At least 20 people have died and several remain missing after a boat has capsized on Lake Maï-Ndombe in northwestern Congo. The vessel was carrying passengers to the capital, Kinshasa, when it overturned. Now we move on to Khartoum. Now we take the breaking news. The Hong Kong government says its investigators so far indicates that mesh and styrofoam materials were responsible for the rapid spread of the recent fire. Officials have begun testing 300 of the 359 towers across the city that currently feature mesh or netting at renovation sites. They further added that suspects arrested in connection with blades mixed standard and substandard materials. Now we move on the focus to Peru. Tension is rising at the Chile-Peru border, where a group of migrants have been stranded for days after Peru deployed soldiers and police to seal its southern frontier. Officials say the move comes as migrants attempt to flee Chile following threats from far-right presidential frontrunner Jose Antonio Cast, who has vowed to deport undocumented migrants within months if elected. Peruvian authorities report a sudden spike in people rushing to the Chacaluta crossing near Arica. Many now stuck in limbo, unable to enter Peru or return to Chile. Among them is Cecilia, an Ecuadorian mother who has spent nearly 5 days at the border, saying she's running out of money and desperate to get home to her children. Now we move on to our next news. 6 months after Sudan's armed forces retook Khartoum, residents returning to the war have ravaged capital are facing dangerous environmental hazards. More than 2 years of fighting between army and the rapid support forces has left factories destroyed, chemicals leaking, and public services in collapse. The Durman industrial area factory owners say they lost control of hazardous materials after strikes and fires, with no authorities able to step in. Experts warned that the destruction of health facilities has created conditions ripe for disease, while debris from bombed buildings is releasing toxic substances like asbestos into nearby homes. With sanitation plants ruined, waste is piling up in open areas and draining into the Nile, fueling outbreaks of malaria, cholera, and typhoid. Doctors say entire families are falling ill within days of returning to the city. They're calling for urgent international action, warning that Sudan's environmental damage could take decades to repair. Now we move on to our next news. Focusing on the Middle East, the Kurdistan Workers' Party has said that it will pause further steps in its peace process with Turkey until progress is made on two key issues. Senior PKK commanders said that they want movement on the release of the group's founder, Abdullah Öcalan, who has led the dialogue from his prison cell since 1999, and on constitutional recognition for Kurdish People Party in Turkey. The PKK says it has already carried out several commitments to support the process, renouncing armed struggle, pulling fighters back to northern Iraq, and taking symbolic steps such as destroying weapons. Turkey, meanwhile, has set up a cross-party commission to outline a legal framework for the group's political participation. PKK leaders say they view that as a positive step, and they are now waiting to see how the process develops from here. Now we stay in the Middle East. The corruption trial of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu continues to dominate national debate. His former defense attorney says Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's new pardon request cannot be approved unless he first admits guilt, a requirement under Israeli law. This comes as Prime Minister Netanyahu, who denies bribery, fraud, and breach of trust charges, submitted the request to President Isaac Herzog on Sunday, arguing that the trial is hindering his ability to govern and that a pardon would benefit national unity. Pardons in Israel are typically granted only after conviction. Opposition leader Yair Lapid says any pardon must include an admission of guilt and immediate retirement from politics. Herzog's office has called the request extraordinary and says it will review it carefully with legal opinions from the Justice Ministry. Coalition allies support Netanyahu, while critics continue to demand his resignation. Now we stay in the Middle East. According to U.S. military, American and Syrian forces have conducted a series of airstrikes targeting Islamic State weapons storage facilities in southern Syria. U.S. Central Command said the operation, carried out from November 24th to 27th, destroyed 15 sites across Rif Damashq province. The strikes and accompanying ground detonations eliminated over 130 mortars and rockets, multiple assault rifles, and machine guns, anti-tank mines, and materials used to make improvised explosive devices. CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper said the operations helps ensure that gains made against ISIS in the region remain lasting. The group, which once ruled large areas of Syria and Iraq, has been largely crushed by a U.S.-led coalition, but managed to regroup in recent years. U.S. President Donald Trump vowed to do everything he could to make Syria successful after November 10 talks with Syrian President Ahmad al-Shara. And that's a wrap on